Felicitations! It is me, Felicia Day, and this is my podcast. Guess what's happening? I have a guest, and she is the best. I have a guest. She is the best. I need to tell you that I have a wonderful person, and you can't even imagine how wonderful this lady is until you meet her and listen to her dulcet tones, but especially meet her in person. If you ever have the chance, you're a lucky dog to get some minor in you. What did that mean? I'm so sorry. Rachel, come along on stage. I'm going to invite you. This is a live Felicitations podcast interview on my Geeks Corner for the Geeks supporters. Hi, Rachel.
Yay! I figured it out. Sorry, I had that covered.
I hear you. And can you hear me?
Sorry. Yes, I am honored. And
honored
I am now
here.
always going to invite people to get some minor in them.
That was so inappropriate, and I felt like, why did it come out of my mouth?
I thought it was brilliant.
I'm so pleased. I wanted you on as a guest for a long time. We were going to do this on Twitch, and now we are doing it here in my new room. So I want to thank you for being here. Also, on joining last minute.
I'm super excited, very honored, and I think the world of you. So, yeah, I really admire you. I think you're brilliant.
Thank you. That's so sweet of you.
Fun.
We haven't hung out enough. I will tell you that I have come to realize that hanging out is not just sitting in a green room at a Comic-Con. That's not actually hanging out.
That's how I see people. I swear, so much of the time, like the only time I get to catch up with friends is and like during panels in front of everyone.
I mean, that's it. And honestly, and I don't know, I've thought a lot about asymmetric relationships, and I feel like we in the con world have asymmetrical relationships in that we have only situational contact with each other. Like if I see somebody I know at a con only, but if I see them out in the wild, I get very awkward. Like, you're in the wrong context, man.
Yeah, but also you've been doing this since you were very young too, right?
Well, I have to tell you, I don't know. I would love to actually share your first con memories. My first con was during Buffy. It was 2004. I know, old. And it was after the last episode had aired. It was in the summer, and I will tell you, it was at the Burbank Airport, but not the cool part of Burbank Airport, which if you could say there is. It was a signing show with literally all 90-year-old guests and us as the young Slayers.
It's awesome. Well, my first experience with a convention was my mom was a Trekkie. And I was, yeah. So when I was like a little girl in the 80s, I went to conventions with her. I've been going to conventions my whole life, basically.
Are you kidding? So did she dress you up in like, an ensign uniform?
No, she didn't dress me up. But I was like very enthusiastic. So I remember things like I wrote Star Trek songs that we recorded, things like that. Yeah, I was very excited.
Do you have copies of those?
I don't, but I remember vaguely there was something like Mr. Spock says logical.
Oh, you gotta ask your mom if those are existing, because that would be so fantastic to share with the world. I mean, honestly, that is something that I wish I had in my life. I don't know if you have a lot of videos of yourself as a kid, but I have zero. So I don't know what I looked like other than some very awkward teen photos.
I do, because I grew up acting.
I know. Well, see, I didn't know that about you.
Yeah, I've got but my whole life was on television. So I had my first kiss on TV and stuff. So I can literally go back and like show you the moments.
Okay, so take me back, because I had no idea. I mean, I know you from Supernatural, and I knew that you did other work and you've been in some movies. I had no idea that you started so young. So walk me through that. Did you come from a showbiz family? Who wanted you to be an actor? How did that start, and when did you start?
Okay, so I came from a showbiz family. My grandmother was an actress, and she used to run the American Academy of Film and Television, the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. And then my grandfather started the first live TV show called Studio One. He was a producer.
No!
Yeah, so like I've got like totally going back full family lineage. My father start was a child actor and then became a director and producer. So
Wow.
I'm really proud of from the geek point of view. He greenlit the first Spider-Man.
Wait,
He
what?
yeah, he was at the time he was an exec I think at CPS. So I have a long family background in it.
So, this is fascinating. I had no idea. So, how did he greenlight the first Spider-Man? How did that even work?
He was in daytime television. He was an exec in daytime television at that
Wow.
time. So like my brothers and sisters had stories of meeting Stan Lee when they were young.
Ugh.
Yeah, no, it's just crazy cool stuff.
I have met Sandy
I'm
many
really
times.
I'm
Many
really
times, and
proud
I
of my
sat in
dad.
his lap twice,
Dude,
and I don't know
you're
why I sat in his
amazing.
lap. Did you ever
Amazing.
sit in Stanley's lap? I feel like I'm not the only one.
No, I didn't. I never met him. I'm just like awed by people who did. I think
You
it's
know,
great.
he is one of the most delightful people I have ever met, and not
That's what I heard.
inappropriate touching. I did just sit in his lap. It was at a party, y'all. I sit in a lot of people's laps at parties.
I love it. But anyway, all this, the reason I like started all this was that I know for me growing up working, I don't have like I don't feel like I'm good with socializing if it's not work. Like I don't know what
Wow.
to do when with myself. I feel like I should always be doing something productive.
That's really interesting because I've been thinking about this quite a lot about socialization and things like that. Now, how old were you when you started working? Because I saw that you were on Guiding Light, and I was like, "Wait, what?" But you
I
were
was, I
on that quite a bit.
was on from when I was 9 to when I was 15. I was on that.
That was years of acting, and you went to I mean, that's the hardest work. Anybody who looks down at daytime television has no idea how the work works because that is 100% the best training, but also just the hardest acting work you can do. Because, I mean,
Totally agree.
I don't know how you do it when you have like dozens of pages of dialogue every single day, and they only allow you one take. If you screw it up, you are not they do not like you.
No, no, it's such precision work too because you're working with multiple at least when I was doing it, it was multiple cameras and
Mhm.
you have to like you don't want to get the boom shadow and like there's a lot so you learn to do that thing that we have to do as actors which is like compartmentalize where you can
Mhm.
like fully be in a moment but at the same time you're technically taking in all the things so you know you're not like shadowing someone or getting a boom in the shot or things like that.
Yeah, which is
It's
so
yeah.
difficult because you're trying to pretend that you're not on stage. Because to do your best work, you really have to pretend you're not there. And at the same time, you're so incredibly aware of all the technical needs for you to hit your mark and have your face at a certain angle. And I feel like now that I've added this up with you and also Jensen, who is on soaps, correct? Like you can always
That's correct.
tell, yeah, you can always tell a soap trained actor because they are able to be there 100% and they never screw up a take.
No, it's actually I loved working with Jensen because we have a similar thing where it's like you can be in the middle of totally like an emotional moment, but at the same time adjusting the person because you see that their angle is slightly off, and like,
Mhm.
and so you're pushing them slightly so they get a better angle or something.
Now I'm, like, really regretting we never had any scenes together because I would have loved to watch you work in that way because I really do admire it. Can I tell you my one soap opera story?
Right, I want to hear it.
It is devastating. So I had a manager early in my career, right around Buffy, who it was right before Buffy, I think. And it was one of my first jobs, and they were very tied into Days of Our Lives. And this is a manager, by the way, who retouched my headshot so my nose was a little bit straighter without even asking me. And I looked at
Oh
my headshot,
no.
and I was like, "Why is my nose so straight?" They were like, "What?" So anyway, they were really tied into Days of Our Lives, and they got me 2 lines on Days of Our Lives. But I was so green. I had really never even been on sets before. And it was like, "Milady, where would you like to sit?" Those were my 2 lines. So, but it happened to be like I was there over lunch because my 2 lines were spaced out, and I had to do "Milady" twice. So, I don't know what happened. I think I pissed off Sammy or something by sitting at the wrong lunch table, or it was just the fact that I had to do my one word 2 times because I wasn't quite angled correctly, like you just referred to. On the way home, I was driving home and I was on the 405 and I had to pull over on the side of the freeway because my manager called me and was like, "What did you do?" And they were like, the casting people called and they were like, they told us never hire that girl again. And I was like,
No.
"What?" To this day, I do not know what happened.
But it's
I don't
also it's such BS too, because the thing is, it's a wonderful training ground, but it's also a really dangerous one because it is so technical. You can become really ticky and like have a
Mm,
lot of dishonest kind of mechanisms to get through because you have to like learn so many lines per day and just get it out, and there are certain things that are expected, but it can, I don't know, to me it can take away from our ability to be like authentically present.
authentic. Yeah.
uh,
So
so it,
how
yeah,
so
I was
9 to 15,
lucky, yeah.
that's like such a formative part of your life. And you're on set every day. So you don't have a school experience, which I didn't know we had in common. I was homeschooled, but I wasn't working, but you're literally working every day at that pace and getting an education and not really being around other kids, right? What do you
Well,
find that you've had to overcome because of that?
it was a bit of a muddled mess because I actually was going to a normal school, and the way that the show I was on, the way that got like shot at that time was it was half days. So I
Mm,
could work like you could work in one half a day and then be done. So I
mhm.
would, or go in later, either way. But I would go to half a day of school often, but it was with a lot of kids, no other acting kids. So
Oh,
I would like show up with like hair and makeup from a soap opera, and it was the most. I was ostracized. Kids at that age, like 9, 10, whatever. There was a lot of weird behavior, and my mom would try to say they're jealous, but I didn't actually process that. I was like, no, that can't be.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
I didn't understand why, especially the other girls did not like me.
And
Um,
you think it was the hair and the makeup, or it's just the fact that you were kinda treated
and
special, or you were
and
an
I
actor?
yeah, I was an actor. I would have the most awkward conversations like, "Can you introduce me to Brad Pitt?" And I'd be like, "No, I don't know him." And then like, "Ah, she's so stuck up." And they'd walk away.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, it was not fun.
That sounds
Um,
almost worse than being homeschooled and socially awkward in my I'm just like I literally have no sense of myself within a social situation. I always look at other people like they're adults and way cooler than me and they don't really wanna be around me. I always assume I'm imposing on someone when I ask them to do something. So, there's that because I just have no literal measure of a person who is me in relation to other people because I wasn't around them. But, like, you almost had I feel like that's almost worse for you because you were around them, and yet they were the ones who chose to reject you. I mean, I'm not
but
laughing because it's funny, I'm just
I
like, it's
didn't know
sad.
it is, but I didn't, and I just it's so weird. I did not know how to process any of it at that age.
No, you can't.
I was always trying to like pull over. Like I remember one time I was doing a magazine article, and I thought it'd be really nice if I mentioned that I was also doing a school musical at the time, and I wanted to talk about how talented the kids I was working with were
Mhm.
and stuff. But it came out. I don't remember. Interviews are their own thing, and I learned later that you really have to watch what you say. But it just got taken out of context, and it sounded like I'm a star in my school too. Like
Oh,
it was
no.
horrible. It was horrible, and kids hated it. Um, so yeah, it was just I felt like I failed a lot of the time. Um,
That's horrible because you're treated it's also kind of weird in a way, just ego-wise, because you're forming your identity, right? So you don't as an actor, as a kid actor, I think it's probably a struggle just to even figure out who you are because you're always somebody else and being praised for being somebody who's not you as you perform. But then at the
yeah,
same time, you are being rejected in all these ways, and it feels like it'd be
and
really
you
hard
don't
to
fit in
weather.
with the adults. Like
Yes.
I was the kid, but on the other hand, so I was kid and I watched a lot. So I actually learned a lot of things. Like I watched come on and get like really huge egos because they got a little bit of attention and
Yeah,
then spiral out. And I learned really quickly just by observation how to kind of stay centered and not to take any of it seriously.
that's really
So
good, and that's probably
actually,
good
yeah.
like, your parents probably helped because really, if you look the reputation of child actors is that they have crazy parents, and they're usually their mother or their father is just pushing them and kinda making them into this substitute self, right? And so that's at least you got that in a way as an advantage.
Actually, it was always me pushing. My parents did not want me doing it. They were really afraid of me getting hurt. So
Wow.
it was from the get go. They said I could go to an acting teacher, and then I got through the acting teacher. I got my first agent. And I booked my first thing was a Woody Allen film,
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah, and so my parents kind of had to give in because I started booking things.
Mhm.
Um, but it was they were never pushing me, and I think it was also in a healthy way because it was something my father actually directed a soap opera when I was young. I think I literally just wanted to be doing what the family was doing. So
Mm.
it was still out of love. And then to me, acting actually is not about ego. It's really when it comes down to it, you're fascinated by other people and you want to tell their story to, and somehow be a via so that you can communicate what it's like to be other people. And there's very little like you in the way. And I
Mhm.
always felt pretty grounded in like that love, and I didn't get too caught up in the rest.
That's
Um,
so, so valuable because, I have a lot of friends. My friend Will Wheaton, seeing him struggle a lot with how he was, his childhood and how his parents kind of approached acting and things like that. I mean, it sounds like it's almost an advantage that your parents were in the business and they didn't come to Hollywood to get famous, quote unquote, through their kid. And those are the ones who really are the ones who pretty put the pressure on. At least your parents seem like very functional and tried to ground you in sort of regularity and yourself, which is really,
yeah.
really wonderful.
It's very true. I
Mhm.
love the imagination part of it and getting to understand other people. And I was fascinated by other people. So,
So
um,
what
yeah.
spurred you to become an actor? Like you would watch a movie and you're like, I wanna be on was it more I wanna be on set or was it I wanna be an actor and do lines and things like that? And what inspired that for you? Did you do plays or did you just watch TV and things like that? That's where
I
you got the idea? Because 'Cause you're so young, you're like 7?
started when I was 8 full time, but I actually started asking to be an actress when I was 2. And
What?
it was a very, I don't fully understand it. So I had seen Alice in Wonderland, and I thought I could get to Wonderland if I was an actor. Like it was very much imagination induced. So like we're both D&D players and things.
Uh-huh.
I love fantasy and pretend to be other things, and had a very vivid imagination, and acting just seemed wonderful to me. But I
Yeah.
quite understand the difference between like, oh, you don't necessarily like it. Just seemed like I got to go to these other realms. So
Wow.
and I really wanted that. And uh I guess it was close enough. I was around it enough that I really, I knew what it was to be around us on a set and stuff as well.
Yeah, if
And
you're
as
even exposed to that a
yeah,
little bit. Yeah.
yeah,
And
um
and that's so fascinating because, I have a 4-year-old and I was really into Montessori, when she was little, and what attracted me to it was the self-sufficiency, but they basically are like, "Don't tell them fairy tales, don't tell them things that aren't real at a young age," because it's so easy to get the reality and fiction mixed up, because as a child, you tell a kid, "Oh, when you're 15, you're gonna turn into a bird." They're gonna believe it because they don't know anything about the world, right? And so you're just learning how the world works, and the fact that you were so attracted to, you know, bringing those worlds to life and those voices to life at such a young age, it was just part of you. That's so cool.
it's interesting because we could talk about I taught 2-year-olds for a while. I love children. but I very much disagree with the no fantasy thing.
Oh,
I
I did too.
think,
That was the one thing I
yeah,
disagreed on. I didn't let her see screens, but I 100% didn't because she's such a storyteller now. She literally would be like, Mama, get me a taco," she said. Like, she literally says that.
I love it. But I also think the world, we have to be able to like self to create, to generate, to create things. That is literally what life is. And I think the idea that there's some solid reality that is not influenced by our conduit, does that make sense?
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
is denying fact. Like that actually is falsehood. I think the idea that there's some, I don't know. I have this. We can talk about later, but I work at Random Acts, which is
yes, I wanna talk a lot
an
about that.
all nonprofit. And I work with 150 staff. One of the joys of my life, but getting to work with that many people, I try to set a tone of the term neurodiversity, as
Mhm.
opposed to saying someone's on the spectrum or whatever. There's I think we're all I think we're all diverse. I don't think there's particularly a neurological norm. I like to give people the ability to advocate and say how they process the world, and how it works best for them, how they work best. I
Mhm.
think there's a lot more room in the world for us to kind of structure things our own way. And
I agree with you.
that
I mean,
makes sense.
especially yeah, absolutely, because I mean, I'm always wrapped up in what I'm wrapped up in, and right now I'm wrapped up in schools because I'm looking for a kindergarten for my kid, and I don't know if you know about me, but I was basically unschooled. So I did a bunch of lessons, but there was no structure to the day. There was no time I had to wake up or be anywhere. I was kind of self-directed in every single way, and I was never tested. So it's very hard for me to be A, in an office or B, um, feeling like I need to reach other people's metric of where I need to be. And so I like to be I'm a free spirit. I really like to create my own world. But at the same time, I go to these schools where everyone is at a desk and everything is very regimented. And I see parents who are like, that's what they want. And I'm like, oh, that's so weird. Why would you want that? And then I realized, oh, I'm as afraid of that kind of structure as they are afraid of the school where you just drop your kid off and they choose what to study.
Yeah, yeah, no, and
So,
that's exactly what I'm saying. Is we all, like, every single person benefits from different things. One of the joys of teaching too is to find that every kid kind of has their own language, their own way of expressing themselves, their own things that work well for them. It's one of the things I loved about your book, Embrace Your
oh,
Weird. I
thank
thought
you.
I thought you were giving people a real opportunity to help find what works for them in the world, and
Yeah.
what is your toolkit?
Yeah.
I
There's literally a toolkit
yeah,
in there.
right. I feel like all of us as human beings, a lot of the tools are kind of, from my perspective, like Dumbo's feather. I don't know, in that story where he
Oh,
thinks that's a thing, but it's actually it doesn't matter that it's a feather. It's whatever works for you, whatever gets you to that place of feeling
yeah.
secure and certain, and you know comfortable in a
Yeah, I don't think
situation.
we're not encouraged as people enough or, in my observation, especially women to know what makes it works for us and put that forth as something that's super important. A lot of the times we're either, what do I need to satisfy for other people to achieve this or get better or get a good grade? And how do I achieve this for other people in my personal life as well? And I think, again, I feel like we are all we're imposed upon a lot. And I'm not saying you just have to live your life completely according to your own credo and you come first. Like that's very self-centered, but the fact that a lot of people don't even acknowledge who they are underneath all those needs from them is, I think, a disservice to us and separates ourselves from our creative spirit.
I don't, to me, it's really important to define, to figure out for yourself what is your value metric. Like, what is
Mhm.
important to you, what means a lot to you. But it doesn't discount the fact that, like, we're also in a world. with so many other people. So I'm also fascinated by like finding out what that other person, what's of value to that other person, and I'm playing with them. We're playing whatever life, we're in a scenario where it's like, okay, so I want to join in with you, and I want to do this activity. So I
Mhm.
need to know your rules too. Like, what are the things that you're living for? And I might want to go along with that. So it's not, to me, it's not an isolated thing. It's just to be able to differentiate that,
Yes.
like, okay, this is something that means something to you, and that's really awesome. And but it doesn't actually mean something to me, except if I want to play with you. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
No, that's true, absolutely. I mean, when we know ourselves, then we have the awareness of ourselves that we can then extend to other people, and that's where we're able to meet in the middle. Like, if we have no awareness of ourselves and no awareness of other people's needs, how do we compromise? How do we even live together? And, I feel like that kind of work you could do on yourself, then once you got yourself sorted out, you can extend that knowledge to other people, and then you're bringing out the best in everybody, yourself and other people. If you don't have that, and I think personally it's an empathy thing, and a compassion thing as well for yourself and other people, and that's what I believe that we're really lacking in the world right now, because there's such division and lack of empathy for other people's living and conditions, that we're not able to extend that kind of uh, extend a physical hand or an emotional hand to anybody anymore. So,
I couldn't
um,
agree more.
well, before we get to random acts, because I want to talk about random acts, and I want to get to some questions we have that are amazing. But I can't. I want to know, how did you end up teaching 2 year olds? Because you are such an amazing actor. You've been working your whole life. Did you take a detour away from acting and then come back to it, or was that something that you used to fill your time when you had some dry spells, which we all have as actors? Like, what are these
So this
side
this
worlds that
was a
you've
really
been?
interesting one. So I actually, when I was still in high school, I got married.
Wait,
Um,
what?
yes, a very public marriage. My ex husband was an actor, so we got married in high school, and I so I and it was very, it like went very public, and so all of a sudden I was under a lot of like public scrutiny. When I was two and wanted to be an actress, I was so excited about wanting to be an actress, and then I found out I could get famous, and I said I don't want to be an actress because I never liked that idea. I knew from an early age that that was like there be dragon. um,
Yeah,
so when I experienced at 17, suddenly having that kind of public scrutiny, and it felt really uncomfortable.
of
And
course. It's
and
really awful.
yeah, yeah, it's not fun. Someone who really loves connecting with people, and
Mhm.
it can be very isolating. I found that
Yeah,
even people I grew up with and knew very well, because suddenly they'd see me in a newspaper or whatever, they were like, "Do you remember me?" Oh yeah, of course I remember you. We're friends. Like
yeah.
it was very uncomfortable the way it was being.
It's also a
Uh,
kind of self-awareness that is imposed upon you that is, deafening in a way, and it also takes away your ability to think of yourself as anything else but you, which I always struggle with. I mean, I went to a local game store last week to play a board game with a friend, and I had a mask on, and I don't think anyone recognized me, and it was the first time, and this is very situational, like, I'm not famous, I'm very situationally famous, but a game store is like 100% you're gonna be recognized, Felicia, and the lightness I had in my heart going in there, playing a game, and leaving, and not feeling like any eyes were on me or anybody was, like, recogni it was so wonderful. It really was, because I was just there for the joy of it. I didn't have to suspect that somebody coming down over to sit down to play a game with us was just doing it because I'm me. And it was
right.
something that I didn't even
Well,
think that I was constantly aware of, but I was.
it's not even a recognition, because it's not necessarily a I'm me. It's a I'm the identity that they think I am,
Yes,
and
exactly. Or yes.
that that was what I had to learn to process. I actually love conventions now, but it took me a while, because at first I felt this strange guilt and anxiety that I wasn't going to live up to someone's imagined me,
Mm,
like just what they wanted me to be, and I couldn't be enough for people. And
yeah,
there's that feeling that I might fall short and disappoint them, and the idea that I might make people unhappy by not being enough. I kind of had to sit with that, and I went so honest about, hey, so that's a really beautiful creation, but that's not me. I don't know if I can live up to that, and just be very present as myself and very honest as myself. And what was really nice is I found that that was actually I've been able to over the years really connect with people. So I
yeah.
feel there's an honesty of like, no, they're not expecting me to be whoever that version was.
That's
And
fascinating.
does that make sense?
Absolutely. No, I have the opposite where I was raised in in a way that I was always demonstrating who I should be on the outside. I was always wanting to achieve things to get praise that would be reflected on certain people in my life. And so I literally was tailor-made for internet, recognition because it is so very demonstrative and you are a thing versus a person, right? And it's almost
Right.
but the older I got, the less fulfilling it was because it felt like I think when I was doing press for Embrace Your Weird, I would say, but basically it felt like I put a lot of pretty pictures on the outside on the windows of a car, and yet I'm sitting inside the car not being seen at all and crying
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I'm not real. I'm not real to myself and I'm not real to other people. And other people would and at a certain point you think other people, if I'm not that outside pretty person, then I'm not useful to anyone. And that has been
Yes.
like a real struggle. That's what fame does to you.
That's exactly right. Well, and that's what I saw with so many of my because in the high school years I went to professional children's school with a lot of actors.
Oh,
And
that's
so I
hard.
saw, and and my ex was, and I just saw so many of these so many people who were put in that box, you become a thing, exactly what you're talking about. It's an object, and it's kind of like, dance for me, do this to me. I don't like the even I have so many wonderful, I think, connections even through social media and stuff with so many people who have, watched Supernatural and
Mhm.
support Random Acts and all that. But I don't respond even to the like, "Hey, do that thing, say that thing. Would it like,
Yeah.
do no, I'm not a commodity. I'm a human
Yes.
being. I'll gladly connect with you anytime on a human level. And I'd like you to think more of yourself than that. Does
Exactly. Well,
that
that's
make
kind
sense?
of why no, absolutely. That's why I started the geeks thing because I mean, it's for me like we need more genuine connections between each other and the not only the asymmetrical relationship between being somebody who's quote unquote well known and the person who's a fan of them, but also the connection between the people who are fans, I think is so important and in being able to
Yes.
enable those in an honest way, not just in a I'm focused on this one thing. That can be the catalyst to a relationship, but we're spending our time with each other around this object. Let's deepen that. Let's
Yeah.
expand it. And I think that's a great segue into random acts because that
Yeah.
is one of the things that really harnesses that fandom and that initial seed of connection and then makes it broader and more fulfilling and deeper. Can you talk a little bit about your
Yeah.
role in random acts and actually just random acts in general in case people don't know about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So Misha Collins, who we both did Supernatural with,
He's
he
okay.
start yeah, he's okay. He's pretty cool. He started this organization, this nonprofit called Random Acts for Random Acts of Kindness, and he was lovely enough, and it's one of the best things that ever happened to me is he tapped me to be the executive director 4 years ago. He started the organization like 10 years ago, and about 4 years ago, uh, we were doing conventions together and getting to know each other, and he saw my passion for philanthropy and knew me well enough that got me for this role, and I've been doing it for the last 4 years.
Fantastic.
So
And what does that entail? Are you kind of the person who, I mean, what do you do day to day with the organization?
So, I it's now an organization of 150 volunteers. So, I am not as like I'm hands on, but I don't get to be as hands on with all the departments. It's so filled with so many incredible, talented people. But kind of over the years, when I started, it was 16 people,
Wow.
staff members, and we built out this organization where there are enough departments that really every like each manager, each department head does so much and is so incredible and so professional and gives so much of themselves that I'm just blown away. We're now the staff members come from 18 countries,
Mm,
and I one of the things that's important is I do make sure that I have one-on-ones with all the staff members because I feel that yeah, I can't be a good I can't like steer the ship well unless I really know each person and what their passions are and why they're there. Does that make
absolutely.
sense? That's really how I think. And then I help to oversee and just kind of make sure everything's keeps moving in the right directions and the directions that we're all hoping for and that we're getting as much good done in the world as possible
Wow. Can you
yeah.
what have you guys recently worked on? Because the projects that you work on, the people you've helped around the world is just so impressive. Can you just what is the latest project that you guys have worked on? And just to
There's
just to
this
really give
ever
people an idea.
there's this ever running thing, which is we fund individual acts of kindness. So anyone can simply point to have an act of kindness of their own. And so we've funded, I think, in like 30 different countries, hundreds of acts per year of just people wanting to do good things in the world,
Mhm.
constantly running. Then this year we've had a food equity program too. So we've been funding all these urban farms and urban farming projects,
Oh,
and
wow.
that's been really exciting and really cool. But we also just we work in partnership with Gish a lot and with Legacy of War and a man named Giles Dooley. Just hope people leave and look him up because he does incredible things. So we just did funding for so that's being done in Afghanistan by an
Wow.
organization called Emergency, and they're funding a hospital there. And they're working on another project called Land for Women, funding some farming land in Africa where women are running their own cooperatives.
And how do you
And
pick what projects to do? Are they nominated? Or are they just your and Misha's ideas? Are they the volunteers? What how do you get a project like, "Oh, I know this amazing thing in Italy that needs some help." And is it's financial help that you guys,
we
provide, or is it even more than that?
it's sometimes only financial work, but often there's partnerships and we help to structure projects. It varies.
Oh,
And it also, in terms of how it comes in, varies. Because we have this incredible network, things that I've been most excited about is making sure we have a real diversity of people on the ground. Oh, I'm really passionate about the fact that we're not kind of a top down savior type organization where we're going to come in and say, this is what you need to be happy.
yeah.
It's much more about uh, us having that conversation and listening and being on the ground and talking to people who are going through things and saying, what do you need? And
Mhm.
trying to help facilitate that. And so that's where most of these projects come in. Is it's usually it's always a personal connection with someone from that area who is to handle something. Or
And
another thing is to me it has to be a kind of community thing of just in the world. Period. We all need help. It should be,
Mhm,
help should not be stigmatized. We should not feel better for being the one being that doing the helping. Just a
mhm.
matter of let's create systems and communities where there's a comfortable like a comfortability with being able to ask for support when you need it or being able to give support. Um,
Yeah, it's wonderful. It is and where can people go if they wanna get involved more or they can learn more about the organization just so we make sure we get that very firmly in the podcast today.
Absolutely, randomx.org. And if you go to my Twitter,
Mhm.
you can find, I have in my bio, I've got the link to the website, um, and I'm constantly always retweeting uh, our random X tweets. So
Of course. Yeah, no, it's amazing what you do. And so I'm going to ask you one question, then we have
yeah.
for myself, and then we have several questions from the audience who really and I think they're really great. How did doing film prepare you to be able to be the head of an organization this size? Because I know my my business acumen is not the same as my creative acumen in that it's just incredibly draining to be able to manage people, manage organizations. I love thinking forward, but I don't the execution of it, especially with people, is really my weak point. How did you translate your abilities that you worked on for so many years to this organization and the organization of it?
I don't, there's a couple of things. One, I do think there is an emotional intelligence that's needed to work within an organization. And I think that's underestimated a lot of the time. So I think that years of being an actor and really trying to understand people, so much of what we're doing is just trying to understand really what makes someone tick. I think
Mhm.
that's very valuable. And so a lot of times that has helped ground me a lot, because really I'm much more interested in listening and
Mhm.
not just being right with my ideas, but like trying to learn and adjust and find out what's going to work for people,
Mhm.
and understand specifically what works for each individual. And running an organization that has such a diversity of needs of each individual, especially it's a volunteer organization. So it's
Yeah.
amazing people. They're not there be- for, for monetary reasons, obviously.
Yeah.
So you have to find out like why are they there? And I think one of the key elements to an organization like that is keeping morale going. And
Yeah.
it's, everyone's there because they want to do good. So that means we really have to be connected to that and keep everyone connected to the thing that inspires them.
Well, you seem like a real leader. I mean, which is but a leader who cares, which is because there is this sort of strange thing where I'm the leader, I have to be disciplinarian, I have to be strong, I have to be able to tell people what to do, and that is the opposite of what good leadership is often, I think,
Yeah.
and that's something I just had to learn over the years because we have this cliched idea of it, which is very masculine and very, black and white and very commander topic from the top, and when you see a place that you're describing, like it's led with empathy, it's led with, allowing people to invest themselves and feel connected to the organization, you're always going to have better work done. You're always going to have people show up for the right reasons, especially as you say, they're all volunteers. Like they're there for reasons that are not monetary. And
Yeah.
what are those reasons, and how do you just cultivate that and make it
Yeah.
as joyful as you can for them?
Exactly. And
So
like
beautiful.
thank you for saying all that. But also, like, to me, one of the things that I'm always saying on repeat is this is an organization that, like, our goal is to quote make the world kinder. I don't want us to superficially go out into the world to make it kinder. It's like, no, it starts internally. It starts with how we treat ourselves and naturally each other, and it naturally flows out.
Mhm.
um and
It
so
does.
I think that you have to like, to me it was always really important that it be an authentically genuine supportive space, um in order for us to do our job well. um
Yeah, absolutely.
but I love that you're saying those things, because I also think one of the hardest things about leadership, but one of the most necessary from my point of view, is the vulnerability. Especially, we've been doing a lot of work in the last few years with like diversity, equity, inclusion, and things like that. And to be able to, as a quote leader, be willing to make mistakes and
Mhm.
admit your mistakes and learn, and in the moment be able to say, hey, I think I got that wrong. um
Yeah.
I could be better. a scary thing because I think like there's a natural defensiveness, especially when you're, in a big meeting and there's a lot of people that you feel like, oh, I'm going to lose my ground. Like they need me to show my leadership by being perfect, and to
Yeah.
be able to publicly not be perfect is scary, but I think it's important.
Well, it's kind of the same that we were talking about fame, right? You have this thing that you have achieved or been given, and you feel like you need to fulfill that image of yourself versus the person you are underneath, right? Whether if you're a leader or you're famous for your art or whatever, and some people respond so badly, they get their ego around it because they've achieved this shell of perfection, or they get so neurotic to keep it because they don't want to show what's really underneath. And really the best way to operate is to be a human, be vulnerable, and still be able to lead, and that is requires a lot more complex thinking and positioning of yourself in your own brain, but ultimately will lead to a lot more happiness within yourself and everybody else.
I agree. And I feel like to me that is one of those things that like for future generations' sake, I want to learn those lessons. I want to be that because I feel like a lot of those images of perfections perfection that we put out are making people very unhappy. I think it's
Mhm.
unattainable. I mean, we're
Yeah. Well,
constantly,
it's not
yeah,
real anyway. It's not real.
yeah,
Nobody's really living those lives. So we're all kind
exactly.
of comparing ourselves to thighs and lives that aren't really are real.
Exactly. Like I know I've been on all these sets. Like even if you're looking at that actor who maybe yes is that good looking stuff, they also spend how much time in the gym and stuff. They couldn't also be a doctor and a parent and a whatever. Like it's
No.
just it's just like and let's be more realistic. We have to pick and choose what is your priority and what's important to you, and be willing to say, hey, I'm not going to like check all these boxes. And this is I talk to the staff a lot about this a lot too. It's like we're not going to all be good at all things.
Mm,
So it's wonderful. It's one of the amazing things about being human and being in groups is that hopefully you're good at something I'm not good at, and vice versa. And we can together support each other and create and accomplish great things.
that's wonderful. Okay, wow, I could talk to you for 8 hours, but I'm going to do a couple of audience questions, then we'll wrap it up because you are on the East Coast, and I don't wanna take up your time. You are so like I said, I could talk for hours. We have 2 I do wanna ask a supernatural question, 'cause we do have
Yes.
a couple of questions about that. Um, for and you can I'm gonna throw out a couple of these in one, we can all answer them. For, what
Want to just
challenges
quickly oh
yeah.
sorry, I just wanted to quickly say I could talk to you for hours, and I'm it's such as I said, I admire you so much. I think you're awesome.
Well, we're gonna play D&D together one day, don't you worry. Um,
Love it.
for Rachel, what challenges did you have in deciding to play a character like the Empty, and was it difficult stepping into a role that was originally played by somebody else? Those are I didn't actually know that the character was played by somebody else in the 1st season. That's very did you feel did you feel strange
Both.
about that or what
Yeah,
how did that work?
I'm lucky with Meg. When I first got the role, I had not seen the other performance. I
Mhm.
fell in love with the character. And I think one of the biggest tricks to acting is trying to get out of your head and not watch yourself and not micromanage.
Mm.
And so I try to avoid, I'm one of those people who like, I try to avoid, luckily I hadn't done a whole lot of like watching the show before I started doing that part. And even with the empty, I tried to kind of like take away any preconceived notions and just kind of find what I could do, and hope that you hope it's good. I To me, like with acting, you don't. I never know if it's going to be good or not. But I know it's definitely going to be bad if I'm watching myself and worry.
Uh-huh, 100%. I mean, there's nothing because there's a fine line between being self-aware and being in the moment, and, like, it's always better work when you kind of forget you're acting, but it's so incredibly difficult. I was actually thinking about that lately because I'm thinking about getting back more into acting. I've taken a long time off, and I feel now ready to do it for the work of it versus, like, all the other reasons that you can get drawn into acting, and it is a big difference between being a stage actor where you really can forget in the process of being on stage for 30 minutes or an hour or whatever, you can forget the audience is there and be in the moment. It is so much more difficult to do that on a film set when you're doing 5-minute chunks of acting and
Yeah.
you have all these parameters of like, don't step over here and make sure to sit here on this and make sure to repeat your actions. It is so much more technical. And it really, it's easy to forget that, oh, yeah, the point of this is to represent another person and forget that I'm me. And
Yeah.
yet it's so hard to do on a set.
Yeah, well, that's what you really have. Like, that's why I think, even D&D is a great example. You have to get really good at kind of the mental discipline of holding multiple things like away from each other. Like, where on one level I know I can be scanning all these things, on another level not letting it touch that
Yeah.
part of me that is this other character. Does that make
Yeah, it is.
sense?
It's very, very, it's definitely, I feel like if we were to all get MRIs, actors' brains would be, much different than regular non-actors.
Like, absolutely. Uh,
One last question, and I think this is a really I noticed that Rachel's been an advocate for differently abled characters in fiction. What advice would Rachel have for writers interested in being more inclusive?
have more or more actors and more writers with disabilities.
So,
Say
yeah,
I on
authentic
yeah,
voices.
yeah, because honestly, I'll say there's a lot of bad representation out there. Um,
Mhm.
that's one of my arguments for it. Like, I really do believe actors can play anything, but I'd like to see more people with disabilities, uh, you know, performing, because I think that they'll hold others to account in terms of the accuracy of storytelling. But I also like to see more writers with disabilities. I think that that would be wonderful.
Yeah, just
I just
authentic. Yeah. I noticed like I watched a pilot the other day and it was with La Brea, which is so funny because I know that area really well. And so it's about a big sinkhole, emerging in Los Angeles and just sucking it up. And but the one of the lead actors has, I think she is amputee below the knee. Um, and I love the fact that that was part of her character. And yet they continually cut to it so many times that it started to define her as a character versus her just being a person who happened this is just
right.
happened to be, you know what I'm saying? And that is, that is bad. And I noticed that, in a lot of writing outside of disability, like a nerd girl, like that's what defines her as nerd, or that's what defines her a lesbian, or that's what defines her as being differently abled. And so that's bad writing. That's not a real person. That's just a cliche that you've put on screen. And I think you're totally right. It requires either the writer to be um, in that position, or at least the writer to get educated better.
I'll say here's what's why I am such an advocate for representation is someone that went through that process of becoming disabled, of getting sick and losing my physical ability. I realized I really had to process a lot of self-hatred and a lot of feeling like I literally, my first thing was I didn't tell anyone, and I just kind of extracted from the world and just kind of
Mm,
disappeared and didn't know how to be social at all and didn't know where I fit and just didn't want to put the burden on anyone, but just felt like I didn't fit society. And so much of that was I realized because I don't see those stories out there. Like, I usually the like the ideals that we seem to have are either the person who miraculously recovers or the person who tragically dies, and suffers. But it's like, what
mm,
happens if you're in between and you just want to live a life? And
yeah.
I don't see enough. We're seeing more now, thank goodness, but I don't think we see enough of that. And so I realized I had to constantly invent or create how I fit in the world and come up with that. Literally, how do I do this thing? Because I haven't seen it modeled for me, so I have no
Mhm.
image of what that would be like. Um,
Yeah, and it
yeah,
requires like, I think that's when you ever see like, when I wrote The Guild, like, there weren't women characters or girl characters out there who were just not defined by that, they were just existing as themselves, right? And I only did that because I really wanted to show people, "Hey, we exist. And now as a woman who's like 40, and I do not see women like me who are 40 and necessarily have like, Marvel characters on the back. It makes me want to write I know I'm going to be responsible for writing that story if I want my story to be out there, because no one else is going to get out there and show that representation but me. And that's what I'm hearing for you. You had to define it for yourself. Those stories are yours to tell.
And I just more and more, I want there to be such a diversity of characters and stories out there that we all feel like not only can we see ourselves, but there are so many that even if we don't see ourselves, we feel like we fit because there are so many people, there were so many different models of ways to
Mm.
live. The
Yeah.
problem that a lot of the, again, it's getting better, but the problem that has traditionally happened is there's such a very small range of models of what you can be as a human, that then
Yes.
anyone who is outside that box, which is basically like 99% of humans,
Yes.
like all of humanity, we're like,
Yeah,
well,
the
no,
box
we
that
don't
we're being
fit.
shown, the box of quote unquote normality we've been showing every day on TV is not normal. That's abnormal.
That's
It's like
what
a
I'm
big
saying.
lie.
It really is. And so that's my argument, is just like, no, we need more stories out there so all of us feel like, oh, I'm allowed to exist.
Yeah, but again, I mean, I think it's part of the Hollywood system, because if you see the kind of people who are choosing, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy where they're trying to perpetuate stereotypes that they feel are comfort to the population because that's just what came before. But the things that really make a difference in this world are those voices who are genuinely like Rachel Bloom and Issa Rae, and like really telling their stories and showing people this is not how you have to be. But it almost requires auteurs to create out of the box and a random set of circumstances for them to allow to get their story out of there, because those stories do not make it to the air or to production generally, because they aren't considered, you know, self-fulfilling enough in a way.
Well, I really do hope it's changing. I
Yeah.
don't know.
I
I
think
think
it's
it's so
changing for the
important.
better. It just feels
Yeah.
very slow.
Yeah.
Well,
Eh,
we will be there changing the world together. Rachel, you are so fascinating. I could speak for another hour. Okay, so if we do the D&D, what class are you going to be? Because I need to be able to plan this.
Honestly, I'm not, and like, I have not played that much. I have done cleric characters. Yeah, I don't I like
So you're going to be
I
a
can't,
cleric.
yeah. I tend to like the fae cleric.
Oh.
Like, I love here's what I know about D&D is I am a true fantasy nerd. So what I did was I really studied a lot of the background, like, of the world of D&D, and so I understand the story, but I'm horrible with things like just like on the fly counting and
Don't worry
figuring
about
out.
that. That D&D Beyond solves all those problems. The guild has been playing
True.
for a year. I don't think half of them know their abilities still. So it's all good. It's all about the role playing. We will either do our own game or have you on as a guest. It would be such a pleasure. And
Cleric,
I'm the
because
cleric in that
I
game,
want.
so
Oh,
you could
okay.
go ahead and be the cleric too.
No, I love that you're as well. I just love being able to save people and like take care
Oh.
of people. So
Oh my God, that is so sweet. Well, you are a true cleric in your heart and to the world.
you are
And
too.
well, thank you. And where can everybody follow you on socials, please?
Twitter, I think it's Rachel Miner one.
Rachel Miner
Uh,
1.
I'm going there now because like I don't know my own
It's
Twitter.
Rachel Miner 1, and in your profile picture, you're
Yes, it
wearing fairy
is.
wings. So
I am.
100% this is you.
I was someone a Gisher did that. It was a Gish challenge. They did that for my birthday. They made me a fairy.
It's fantastic. You are truly a fairy. You're a magical creature.
Thank you. So
Well,
are
thank you
you.
so
I
much for
think
being
you're.
here.
Have a great
All right,
night.
everybody. Bye.